Hello and welcome to the All of God's Daughters channel. This is episode 9 in the Preparing for Marriage series. Love is not a joyous reaction to someone else's perfection, but it is a sacrificial giving when somebody failed or acted sinful. So we have to ask ourselves, in this situation, will we be able to love somebody even if they fail or if they act sinful, if they hurt us? Because love is putting someone else above yourself at the expense of yourself. We can think of what Christ did when he died for us, and as the Bible says, while we were yet sinners. So granted, people who are not able to do this marry all the time, but then what comes after that is a lot of fighting and conflict, and it's just a struggle. And then also the second one is, if you are a responsible person, if you struggle to manage your personal life, your emotions, for example, then you'll find married life is a lot more difficult and even unenjoyable than you expected. And when you marry, we get a type of power over our spouse. Our irresponsibility no longer just influences us. So we can make their lives better, or we can cause a lot of trouble. We have to understand that when we let go of our responsibilities or ignore them, that our spouse will also take the punch, and eventually, once you get children, they will too. And we have to face life head on and accept all the hardships and the challenges and the difficulties with the joy and success. When we marry, we get even more responsibilities. We don't get less. And if we are not ready to take a type of responsibility over someone else's life, our spouse, and then we'll cause a lot of pain. Life is full of responsibilities. We have working, cleaning, exercising, self-management, caring for our loved ones. And if we love pleasure more, or maybe we fear hardships or we fear effort, then this can keep us from our responsibilities. And once we ignore these responsibilities, the effects will start hitting us, our spouse, and our children. It does not take long after you get married to start noticing your own mistakes and also your partner's mistakes or your spouse's mistakes. And our selfishness will get tested from the very first day as husband and wife, as well as our irresponsibility. So granted, we do get different degrees of selfishness and irresponsibility, but when we're considering getting married and building a healthy marriage, we want to make sure that we are very low on the scale of selfishness and irresponsibility, and that we choose somebody who is also low on the scale. If you are selfish and irresponsible, your spouse might end up wishing he never married you. So let's name an example. So you're on your honeymoon and somebody needs to do the dishes. So we have 3 options here. Either you don't bother, you basically ignore the responsibility completely. Usually that will either cause conflict or underlying stress or just this awkward feeling because now you have to live in this dirty space on your honeymoon. Or you expect your partner to help, and if it doesn't, you complain. Or you see it as an opportunity to serve your spouse and you willingly and joyfully accept the responsibility. And in the third option, we can see how selflessness and responsibility link and how they work together to help you serve your spouse without feeling bitter. Many people live in the adult world and still act selfishly and irresponsibly. But married life is rather about acting like Christ, selflessly and in love. So I can hear some women already arguing, if I have a heart of service where I'm being selfless and I'm acting out of love, won't my husband end up using me? Why should I do everything? What about his responsibilities? If you're thinking along that line, the chances are you are not ready to serve. Or you know that the person you're with now will make a lousy spouse, so you have this feeling, this conviction that he will end up acting in this way and treating you badly. Or maybe you believe men are monsters, they are inherently bad. And once again, we have to pray for our husbands and also choose well. I would like to just make a quick note on forgiveness, because if you have unforgiveness or bitterness in your heart, then loving unconditionally will be incredibly difficult. And once your partner fails you or acts out of sin and you are not able to forgive them, then you won't be able to love them in this way that is required for a healthy relationship. I'd like to emphasize that this is in the case of a healthy relationship where there is no abuse. This is a normal relationship with the normal issues in marriage. So if you've played a team sport before, you'll know how uncomfortable it can be and how dysfunctional a team can become if one of the members have beef with another. And everyone knows and everyone suffers with them, especially once you're facing your opponent. It is as if they even lose the ability to see who their real opponent is. So, for the sake of a healthy future marriage, we need to talk about forgiveness and grudges because frankly, there is no place for them in a healthy marriage. And I probably would like to make an entire video about being a team player and how important that is in marriage. And I like this example because it's something that I can relate to. I like team sports a lot when I was in school, and partly because I like people and partly because it felt awesome to have the players work together and, yes, of course, beat the other team. But for me, my husband is the best teammate I've ever had, and we approach life together. He is pulling his weight and some of mine, and I'm trying to do the same for him. Your future husband should never be an enemy in your mind. You shouldn't already be on the defense. If you find it difficult to forgive people, that hatred will damage your relationship. If it is somebody other than your spouse, it will hurt the two of you, not because of some mystical reason, but simply because it shows that you don't understand how to forgive yet, and that once you are put to the test, once you have to forgive your spouse for either a big or a small mistake, it means that there's a big chance that you won't know how to do it because you haven't practiced it before. And you will start harboring resentment and unforgiveness, and your relationship will slowly begin to become sour. So we need to learn how to forgive and how to deal with an unforgiving heart before we get married. Or we will be on the defensive and we won't be able to love unconditionally. We won't be able to love our spouse more than we love ourselves. There are a few principles that really helped me to be able to forgive and love in the biblical sense. It's a type of sacrificial love. And for us to do that, I think that there are a few things that we need to know. The first one is who we are. We are mere human beings. We are not self-sufficient. We are not inherently worthy. We are not beings who can expect anyone to do what we want them to do. We don't have any rights other than those God gave to us. This is all about being humble and realizing that we are just as much a sinner as the person who just wronged us. And then also we have to realize who we are in relation to God. We are completely dependent on Him. This means that nothing we have, nothing we've accomplished is anything to boast about. We are vapors in the wind. We are temporary. Our time on earth is very short, and everything we have was given to us by God. Still, what we do here is incredibly important and it matters a great deal. So if somebody wrongs us, it is only wrong because God told them not to do it. It is not because we have some kind of godlike authority or even rights that we can enforce on them and say, how dare you hurt me like this? How dare you break my laws? The laws that they are breaking are God's laws. That means that they are accountable not to us, but to God. And many times people become very ill, yes, literally, mentally or physically or both, because they try to punish people or they try to fix the wrongs against them because they feel like they have rights and they have laws. Those belong to God. And we can also do well when we remember that we are not better than the other person. We don't deserve better than they do. We don't have more rights than they do. We don't have any rights above them. But what we do have is a commandment from God to love and to serve them. And they have that same commandment from God. And if they do not treat us that way, then it is in fact God that they are wronging. And when we marry, we make a vow before God. It is a vow to God, not just our spouse. Whenever our spouse makes a mistake, it will be very difficult to serve him. And we need to remember who we are actually serving in that scenario. So once we realize that we are temporary sinners forgiven by God, completely equal to our husbands, in other words, just as much a sinner, and yes, God can do a great work in our heart. He can change us. He can give us a renewed personality, likes and dislikes, even character traits. But once again, we cannot boast about that because it's not from us. It's something that God instilled in us. Goodness is something that comes from God. I'm talking about a follower of the Lord who makes a mistake or fails because this is life and it will happen. And we need to know what to do in that moment. And if it's something that we've never done before we got married, then it will be really difficult for us to suddenly practice forgiveness. If you're not geared to deal with this in marriage, then you will have a very hard time because your husband will fail you. He is not God. He is just a man. He will make mistakes and he will sin. I pray that your marriage will not be plagued by bitterness, and I earnestly plead with you to consider what I have said, stop any bitterness in its tracks, and deal with it swiftly before you get married. Not just the person, but bitterness itself. If there's somebody that you need to forgive, start praying about it today. And of course, we do need a a real love from the Lord, a fulfillment from the Lord, because when we sacrifice ourselves, we are not left empty, but the Lord comes in and He fills that space. He fixes that hurt because we turn to Him and we take the hurt to Him instead of holding it against this person and waiting for this person to repent and fix this hurt or this injury that they have inflicted us with. Instead, we turn to the Lord and we say, Lord, I'm taking this hurt to You and I'm asking You to fix this. And in the meantime, I'm praying for this person. I'm praying for forgiveness and for healing in our relationship. And Lord, please help me be merciful and be merciful to me as well. All of us, myself included, we do well to always love giving more than we love receiving. I hope this video was helpful to you. If it was, please click the like and subscribe button, and I hope to see you in the next video.